if I could, I'd like to ask my fellow Commissioner Kennedy, to lead us in flag salute.
Please join me in paying tribute to the flag of our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Can we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Kennedy?
Here.
Commissioner Burkhart?
Here.
Commissioner Ostrom?
Here.
Commissioner Troutman?
Here.
Chair Berger?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Okay, first up we have on there's the approval of the agenda for tonight.
I'll move that we approve those minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. We have the minutes from July 15th, 2008, and also the study session meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. At this time, can we please have the Secretary's announcement, please?
Welcome to the regular meeting of the Santa Clarita Planning Commission. I would like to offer some information to help you understand how we conduct our meetings and how you can best participate. Agendas are on the back table listing the items the Commission will consider tonight, along with speaker cards. If you wish to speak on an item that is before the Commission this evening, you must first fill out a speaker card. Please place your completed card in the tray or deliver it to me prior to the item being discussed. This will help the Commission process public comments in an orderly manner. If you wish to submit written comments only, complete a green written comment card also located on the back table. When Chair Berger announces your name, please approach the podium to address the Commission. Applicants have up to a total of 25 minutes to make their presentation to the Commission. Each individual speaker will be given 3 minutes to make his or her comments, indicated by a colored light on the Commission dais. A green light appears when the speaker begins, a yellow light appears when 30 seconds remain, and a red light appears when the 3 minutes have expired. Your comments should be complete at this time. And to help keep our meeting running smoothly, please refrain from applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Okay, first up this evening, we got a full agenda tonight, and thank you, everybody, for coming out. Tonight, we have first item, and I'll turn this over to Mr. James Chow.
Thank you.
James.
Good evening, Chair Berger and members of the Planning Commission. My name is James Chow. I'm Associate Planner with the City's Planning Division. The item before you this evening is the Master's College Master Plan Project. This is a continued public hearing item from July 1st, in which the Planning Commission received a project introduction and a project description summary of the proposed plan. The purpose of tonight's meeting is twofold. First, it's to provide the Planning Commission with a overview of the draft environmental impact report prepared for this project, and also to address the concerns that were raised by the Planning Commission at the July 1st meeting, and to receive additional comments and direction from the Planning Commission. Joining us this evening, sitting to my right, is Minta Schaefer. She's with Impact Sciences, the city's EIR consultant. Both Minta and I will be preparing and going through the presentation and going through each of the sections discussed in the EIR, and it'll be a joint effort in providing that presentation to you this evening. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Minta.
Hi, this presentation is going to include an introduction to the environmental review process, an overview of the environmental process for this project, and summaries of project impacts and project alternative analyses included in the environmental document, as well as a question and answer session to follow. The Environmental Impact Report, or an EIR, is generally a forecast of the future from an environmental perspective. That's a good way to look at it. Generally speaking, build-out of undeveloped land within the Santa Clarita Valley will occur in basically the same way, with or without the proposed project. And so the EIR has the job of telling us what will happen with regard to various environmental topics, including, for example, air quality and traffic, as the valley builds out. The EIR will also answer the question as to what will happen if an alternative to the proposed project would occur. And these alternatives are defined in the EIR and analyzed under all of the environmental topics that the project is analyzed under, but to a lesser extent. And our job as the preparer of the EIR is to provide an informational document to the Planning Commission and City Council so that an informed decision on the project can be made. And it's important to remember that what an EIR does not do is provide an opinion as to whether the project should be approved or not, but rather it's just an informational document that can be used by the decision makers. This slide provides a summary of the environmental review process, and the process for this particular project began with an initial study, and that falls under that initial review by City of Santa Clarita. That initial study, along with a notice of preparation or NOP, was circulated for public and community and public agency review. The comments received during that period, among with other information, were taken and used to prepare the draft EIR, which has been released for public review. We're currently within the 45-day public review period for this document. That period will end on August 21st. And next to the 45-day public review period block there, you'll see that there's the public hearing on draft EIR, and that is this hearing here tonight. So we're right there within the process. The next step is to prepare a final EIR. That document will provide detailed written responses to all comments received in letter form, as well as verbally here tonight, and any other comments that may come in in other forms, maybe via email, for example. After the final EIR has been completed, there will be a Planning Commission public hearing followed by a City Council public hearing. And after those public meetings, it will be up to them to decide whether they want to certify the EIR and then go ahead and make a decision on the proposed project. An environmental impact report, or EIR, contains several components. One is a description of the existing condition, and that's an important part of the document, as it is the baseline under which impacts are evaluated, or against which impacts are evaluated. In addition, of course, there's a project description included in the document, and an analysis of environmental impacts that would occur as a result of the proposed project. In addition to looking at what impacts the proposed project itself may cause, the EIR looks at cumulative impacts, or the impact of the project when considered together with past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future projects. Once those impacts have been identified, mitigation measures are provided that are designed to reduce identified impacts to a level of less than significant, if possible. And finally, there is an analysis of the project alternatives that I mentioned before. And going back to the existing conditions, under CEQA, the existing condition is defined as the condition at the time the NOP is circulated or published. In this case, just really briefly, the existing condition at the project site is that it's approximately 108 acres and currently includes the Master's College campus, some vacant land, Creekview Park in the southernmost portion, and 2 water tanks.
The next slide is an illustrative plan that I think you're all familiar with. This was summarized in the July 1st project introduction to the Planning Commission. It's important to note and summarize, again, the 4 major components that make up the project. We're not going to go into detail, as that's what the July 1st meeting was for. But to remind everyone, the Master's College Master Plan project consists of 4 primary components. The first is the 10-year master plan proposal that would guide the future development of the Master's College campus. The second component is the proposed extension of both Dockweiler Drive and Deputy Jake Drive from their existing terminuses through the project site. The third component is the proposed 54-unit multifamily residential product, as you can see here in the middle of your screen, located on the future Deputy Jake Drive extension. And the last, fourth and final component is the open space component, which the applicant proposes to dedicate over 20 acres of open space area to the city of Santa Clarita. And again, that summarizes the four components and the project description.
This slide shows a list of topics that were included in the EIR, and those are visual resources, air quality, biological resources, geology and soils, hydrology and water quality, land use and planning, noise, population and housing, fire services, sheriff services, transportation and circulation, water services, solid waste, and wastewater disposal. During the initial study process that I mentioned before, the city determined that several environmental topics were less than significant and did not need further analysis. And those included agricultural resources, cultural resources, hazards and hazardous materials, mineral resources, parks, recreation, and schools. And to kind of illustrate how those topics were eliminated at that early stage, an example would be agricultural resources. Because the project site is not being used or has historically been used for agricultural purposes, nor is it designated as, for example, prime farmland, that could be determined as less than significant early in the process. One item with regard to schools that is noteworthy is that the Master's College and the Newhall School District have recently entered into, they're putting together an agreement to alleviate any concerns that the Newhall School District may have and to assure that impacts to schools within that district would be less than significant, as concluded in the initial study. As I mentioned before, an EIR looks at the impacts of a proposed project and provides mitigation measures designed to reduce identified impacts, ideally to a level of less than significant. However, there are times when either an impact can't be mitigated because there are no feasible or mitigation measures don't exist, or the identified mitigation measures don't mitigate the impact to a level of less than significant, though they would be implemented nonetheless. And as just kind of a brief summary of the unavoidable significant impacts that were identified in this EIR, we'll touch on those in more detail later in the presentation, but under construction operation, and cumulative scenario, there is a significant and unavoidable visual resources and solid waste disposal impact. During construction, unavoidable significant impacts for air quality and noise, and during or under cumulative, it would be for biological resources.
The first topic discussed in the EIR is in regards to visual resources. The next few slides will summarize some before and after pictures of the project site on and off and around the project site, showing existing conditions and future conditions at a 5 to 7 year period after the start of construction. And that's what you'll see in the visual sims. The first view location is off of Placerita Canyon Road and the Quigley Canyon Road intersection. This is looking southward towards the college campus. In the foreground, you'll see existing buildings, the computer sciences building here and the Powell Library to the right. And the dominant feature in the background is the existing significant ridgeline located in the back here. The photo simulation provided for this particular project, as you can see in the bottom portion of the slide, shows a couple of significant changes in the foreground. As you'll notice, the future construction of the computer sciences building here, a new trellis system, trellis structure here, and in the background you'll notice the proposed chapel with its steeple projecting here. And the major change in the background, as you'll notice, is the alteration to the ridgeline, which would be shifted southward and also reduced in elevation. The second view location is also located on Clarita Canyon Road, just down the road. This is a view standing in the baseball field parking lot on the college campus, looking southward. What you'll notice here in this existing photograph is the parking lot located off of Clarita Canyon Road. This is where you would park your car if you're visiting the main college campus. You'll see existing oak trees in the middle portion of the photo, and of course the ridgeline in the back. The photo simulation provided here identifies a change in the foreground. As proposed with the project, the parking lot that now exists off of Clarita Canyon Road would be removed and eliminated and replaced with a campus green, grasses, trees, and also a trellis that's a part of the arbor and trellis system for the proposed master plan. You'll also notice the oak trees in the back, and also the steeple for the proposed chapel back here as well. And of course the ridgeline is the biggest change in the background there, where it would not be visible from this location. The third location is a view from the terminus of Dockweiler Drive. This is closer to the area that the Planning Commission took their field trip out on and walked out to the end of Dockweiler Drive. This is a view looking northwest towards the college campus, and in the middle you can see the baseball field there. The photo simulation, again, this would depict an image 5 to 7 years after start of construction. You'll notice the roadway, Dockweiler Drive, in the foreground, as well as the two proposed classroom buildings and the proposed chapel as well in the middle portion of that screen. The next location is a view from close to the existing city community center on Market Street. This is a view looking eastward. At the very top here, you'll see the top portion of the Smith dormitory. And in the photo simulation, there isn't much of a change, but the one change that you will, or that you can notice here, is that a portion of that ridge would be lowered for the future extension of Dockweiler Drive. And the last viewing location provided in the EIR is a view from Creekview Park, and this is looking northward towards the college property. And in the background, you'll notice the ridgeline. To the right of the screen, you'll notice the existing single-family residences on the Hidden Knoll community. And to the left of the screen is the existing dormitory. The proposed photo simulation, as you can see here, identifies the impact to the proposed, or to the ridgeline. This impact is a result of the extension of Dockweiler Drive. You'll also notice that at the very peak of this view, you'll notice street trees, also street lights, and also the proposed 54-unit condominium community, which is screened by landscaping in this area here. Not shown in the pictures are the construction activities that would occur as a result of this project, which is considered a significant and unavoidable impact. The project would also contribute to the ongoing conversion of the Santa Clarita Valley into a suburban type of environment, which is also considered a significant and unavoidable impact. And as Minta had mentioned earlier, with regard to visual resources, the project would result in, again, a significant and unavoidable impact excuse me, at a construction level, operations level, and at a cumulative level.
Okay. The next topic addressed in the EIR was air quality. And that analysis found that during construction, two pollutants, specifically oxides of nitrogen and PM10 emissions, would exceed regional South Coast Air Quality Management District thresholds of significance. And PM10 is essentially dust, and oxides of nitrogen are essentially coming from engines associated with construction activities. In addition to the regional impact, during construction, a localized impact would occur with regard to PM10 and PM2.5, again, essentially dust. And that would be because the emissions would exceed South Coast Air Quality Management District thresholds. And several mitigation measures have been included in the EIR. In addition, the project applicant would be required to comply with Rules 403 and 1186 under South Coast Air Quality Management District regulation. However, even with implementation of those measures, the emissions would exceed the thresholds, and so therefore the impact is identified as significant and unavoidable during construction. During operation, the modeling indicated that air pollutant emissions from mobile being vehicles and stationary, which would be like a lawnmower during landscaping activities, those would be below the South Coast thresholds. And similarly, during or under a cumulative scenario, the impact would be less than significant. And the next topic is biological resources. James and I are going to split this topic. I'm going to go over all components of that section except for oak trees. And so this slide includes a figure that was provided in the EIR, and this shows all of the 18 plant communities that were identified on the project site. And of those 18 plant communities, 2 are considered special status, and those include, it appears that I have, thank you, James. Those include Coast Prickly Pear Succulent Scrub and Scale Broom Scrub. In addition, and this is a summary of the on-site resources, so the figure there showed the 18 plant communities. In addition to those communities, there are 430 oak trees present on the project site. 388 of those were identified and addressed in the EIR, and there are 42 additional oak trees that James will describe in a moment here. Additionally, there is a potential for 10 special status plants and 17 special status wildlife species. And what that potential really means is that during surveys, habitat was identified. These species were not viewed. However, there is potential for them to occur on the site. Overall, the section concluded that there would be a significant impact with regard to the loss of 43.5 acres of habitat. And that area includes 36 acres of coastal sage scrub and chaparral habitat and 2 acres of coast live oak woodland. And that's essentially just due to the development of the vacant land on the site. And those 36 and 2 acre communities, while the overall loss of vacant land and the associated habitats at a project level was determined to be less than significant with mitigation measures included in the document, but on a cumulative basis, the loss of coastal sage scrub and coast live oak woodland, that's considered a significant and unavoidable cumulative impact. And then James will discuss oak trees in a moment here, but just overall, the project would result in the removal of 121 oak trees, would work within the drip line of 75 oaks, and also work within the 5-foot protected zone of 22 oak trees.
As a follow-up to the Planning Commission's request made at the July 1st meeting, a detailed oak tree plan, those were provided in your staff reports. Those plans identify 3 of the most significant areas of impact to oak trees located on site. I'll be going over each of these 3 areas, which are circled and highlighted in the illustrative plan here. These 3 areas include what is considered the chapel area, located here, the Deputy Jake Drive residential area, located here, and also the Dockweiler Drive cluster of oaks, which are generally located in this area here. Since the July 1st public hearing, additional information was submitted to city staff, and this came after the July 7th circulation of the environmental impact report. This will result, as I'll summarize in the next slide, or one of the next slides, result in a requirement for recirculation for the biology section. But I will summarize each of those impacted areas. The first impacted area, again, is the chapel area. You may be able to make out in this screen here the proposed chapel. And in this area, this impact area, there are 32 healthy oak trees that are proposed for removal in this particular area. Located and directly impacted by the proposed chapel are 26 oak trees that are highlighted in red. These are oak tree locations that are, again, proposed for removal. Other colors that you'll see here are yellow and green, which represent encroachments and no impacts, respectively. The next impact area for proposed removals is the Deputy Jake Drive oak tree area. In this particular area, there are approximately 15 oak trees that are proposed to be removed. This number could be greater if the installation of keystone walls was not proposed. There are additional oak trees at the bottom of that south-facing slope that would not be impacted due to the proposed keystone walls that are a part of this project. The third impact area is what is considered the Dockweiler Drive area. In this area, there exists 35 healthy oak trees, a combination of scrub oak and coast live oak. As you can see, the dots colored in red, these are proposed removals, and the proposed number of removals for this particular area is 32 oaks. The fourth area, this is the new information that was provided to city staff since the circulation of the draft environmental impact report. There are recently planted mitigation oak trees that were a result of the Hidden Knoll project. These are off-site mitigation oaks that were required to be planted as a part of mitigation for that particular project. In this particular area, this is located off of the terminus of Deputy Jake. There are approximately 27 mitigation oaks located in this area that range from 1 inch to about 5 inches in diameter. These are, again, newly planted oaks, probably within the last 3 or 4 years. And also located in another mitigation area close to the existing water tanks are 15 additional mitigation oaks, also ranging from 1 inch in diameter to 5 inches in diameter, located on the Newhall County Water District property. City staff is continuing to work with the applicant on providing a detailed mitigation plan. This table is taken from your staff report. This is a table that identifies and addresses the current proposed mitigation plan as summarized in your staff report. As you can see, this is broken down into three or four different locations on the project site, including 47 oaks proposed to be removed on the Master's College property, 32 oaks located off-site near the Dockweiler Drive extension area, and 42 mitigation oaks that were a result of the Hidden Knoll project. For each of these proposed removals, there is a proposed mitigation or number of mitigation oak trees that are proposed to mitigate for those impacts, which would result in up to a total of 1,173 mitigation oaks that could be planted on site Also being considered is potentially a contribution to the Oak Tree Preservation Fund if there isn't enough area on site to plant these mitigation oaks.
The next topic addressed in the EIR was geology and soils. Several geotechnical analyses were conducted for the project site. They included evaluations of on-site soils, slope stability, and the proposed project overall from a geotechnical perspective. About 1.2 million cubic yards of earth will be moved on site, but it will be balanced, and therefore no import or export will be required. Several keystone walls or supporting walls are proposed that would allow for the extension of Dockweiler Drive and Deputy Jake Drive. And within the geotechnical analyses conducted for the project, all aspects were evaluated and recommendations were included. Those recommendations were provided in the EIR as mitigation, and with implementation of those measures, impacts to geology and soils would be less than significant. Next topic is hydrology and water quality. Hydrologic analyses were prepared for the project that primarily focused on the stormwater drainage system proposed. And that system generally includes 3 swales and 3 detention basins located throughout the site that would serve to filter the stormwater before it's discharged into Newhall Creek, either directly or along Placerita Canyon, which will eventually drain into Newhall Creek. The drainage pattern and course of Newhall Creek won't be changed under the proposed project, and the an adverse flow velocity will not occur as well. Compliance with city requirements and NPDES permits will also serve to result in a less than significant impact to water quality and hydrology.
As summarized in the July 1st project introduction meeting summarizing the project description, there was a summary of the entitlements proposed for this project. As you remember, there are 8 entitlements proposed with this master plan project, which includes the master plan, a general plan amendment, a zone change, a tentative track map, conditional use permit, ridgeline alteration permit, hillside review, and an oak tree permit. The EIR analyzed each of these proposed entitlements and also found that the project would not conflict with the general plan or the UDC with approval of each of these proposed entitlements.
Noise impacts were addressed in the EIR, and that analysis found that during construction, equipment on site would generate noise in excess of the thresholds of significance, and several mitigation measures were recommended and would be implemented. However, the noise levels generated would still have a significant impact on both nearby residences as well as on-site dormitories, and so that impact was concluded to be significant and unavoidable. As far as after the project is built out, roadway noise levels were modeled, and it was determined that roadway noise would not exceed the thresholds provided in the city land use compatibility guidelines, and so that impact was identified as less than significant. And additionally, mitigation measures were provided in the EIR that would assure that impacts to the residences within, or the residents rather, within the condominium units proposed on site would be less than significant. Population and housing was addressed in the EIR. The Master's College Master Plan includes an enrollment cap of 1,700 students, which includes 1,500 full-time and 200 part-time students. Current enrollment is approximately 1,100 students, and so the plan would increase student population by about 600, and that 600 students would be 500 full-time and 100 part-time. The 54 condo units proposed would add approximately 167, individuals to the city, and that results in an overall total of 767, an increase in population of 767. With regard to housing units, in addition to the 54 condominium units proposed, there are 200 new dormitory beds. And with regard to employment, there are 25 faculty and 83 new staff positions that would be generated by the expansion of the college. And these projections were evaluated against City and Southern California Association of Government projections, and it was determined that the impact with regard to population, housing, and employment would be less than significant. This slide lists the service sections that were included in the document. Those are fire, sheriff, water, and wastewater. And the EIR evaluated the resources and staff associated with each of these service providers and what demand the project would place on those service providers, and concluded that impacts would be less than significant and no mitigation was recommended or needed. Next, solid waste. As mentioned prior, the impact to solid waste under construction, operation, and cumulative was determined to be significant and unavoidable. And basically that's due to the fact that landfill space is finite. Overall, the project during construction, over the 10-year construction period, would generate approximately 567 tons of waste, and then after build-out, approximately 118 tons of waste per year. This does not consider compliance with city requirements or Assembly Bill 939, and so in reality, the solid waste generation would be about half of that conservative estimate. But again, landfill space is finite, and so that impact was considered significant and unavoidable.
A detailed traffic analysis was provided for the proposed Master's College project. Impacts were analyzed for each of the following intersections that you can see up there on that slide, including several intersections that were discussed at the July 1st Planning Commission meeting, specifically Valle del Oro, Dockweiler Drive, Valle del Oro, Deputy Jake Drive, and also on the Clarita Canyon side, 13th Street and Railroad Avenue, to name a couple. It was determined that that's at Sierra Highway in the Clarita Canyon Road intersection, which is an LA County Congestion Management Program intersection, that intersection meets the requirements for this analysis. Impacts to local intersections were evaluated with the extension of Dockweiler Drive all the way to Lyons Avenue, and without the ultimate extension of Dockweiler Drive to Lyons Avenue. It was determined that a significant impact was identified at the Sierra Highway and Clarita Canyon Road intersection. Mitigation measures are provided in your EIR, which determined that with the payment of their fair share and the B&T fees, and also with certain restriping requirements that will be discussed more in depth. I.M. Perry senior traffic engineer with the city, can also provide additional information regarding that particular mitigation measure that would reduce this impact to that intersection to a less than significant level. The ultimate extension of Dockweiler Drive to Lyons Avenue would certainly improve local traffic and access conditions, particularly to Clarita Canyon Road, as traffic would be offset and relocated onto Dockweiler Drive as opposed to the existing campus entrance on Clarita Canyon. A thorough parking analysis was provided by the college at the direction of city staff. A parking consultant was hired for the project to identify existing conditions as well as future conditions to the campus and any impacts it may have on the adjacent canyon areas. That analysis concluded that, compared against the Unified Development Code parking requirements, that a surplus of 261 spaces would result with the project build-out. Also included in this analysis was a comparative analysis to other jurisdictions with similar college campuses, and also field surveys to identify existing conditions and comparing it against future conditions. And it was determined that in a worst-case scenario, there would still be a surplus of 13 spaces when comparing to other code-like requirements of other jurisdictions. Since the July 1st meeting, city staff, at the direction of the Planning Commission, did conduct a thorough analysis also of parking conditions at the Vista condominium community, as well as the terrace apartment community off of Valle del Oro and Dockweiler Drive. With the help of several of the residents in each of these HOAs, staff was able to identify 340 units existing at the Vista condominium complex or community. Each of these units is provided with 2 spaces for each unit. In addition to that, there are 187 guest parking spaces located throughout the Vista community. Comparing this against the county code requirements under which this project was reviewed, there is a surplus of roughly 102 parking spaces, guest parking spaces, for the Vista community. With the terrace apartments located on Valle del Oro, there are 563 units within this community. Each unit, 1-bedroom unit consisting of 1 space, each 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom unit consisting of 2 parking spaces. Throughout the community, there are a total of 276 guest parking spaces throughout that community. Again, comparing this against the county code requirements under which it was reviewed, there is a net surplus of 111 guest parking spaces. Provided in your Planning Commission packets, there are 2 exhibits which I think you'll find useful. The first, as you can see up on your slide here, this is just an indication of the existing street sections for Dockweiler Drive, taken at 2 locations. The first location, location A, this is a cross-section located near the Vista condo community. The street section here, as you can see, has a total right-of-way width of 73 feet. This is enough. Actually, it consists of a landscape median, pavement for traffic movement, consisting of about 25.5 feet in width, with a parkway area of about 4.5 feet beyond the curb. And the other section taken was closer to Sierra Highway. This is an existing Dockweiler Drive section for that area. This portion of Dockweiler Drive actually consists of 4 lanes in either direction, with a striped median, with a total of 80 feet of right-of-way, and parkway on either side, totaling 8 feet. And comparing that with the proposed Dockweiler Drive extension, which is consistent with the proposed general plan designation for a secondary arterial, you have a right-of-way width of 92 feet consisting of travel lanes totaling 29 feet, a median that is 14 feet, and a parkway and sidewalk totaling 10 feet. And another exhibit provided for you in your staff reports is a sidewalk exhibit identifying existing sidewalks in that community off of Valle del Oro and Dockweiler Drive. As you can see, there are sidewalks on either side of Valle del Oro leading up to Dockweiler Drive, and there is also an existing sidewalk on the south side of Dockweiler Drive leading to the elementary school. But there are no sidewalks located on Dockweiler Drive. No public sidewalks located on Dockweiler Drive.
The last component of the EIR that we'll cover is the alternatives analysis. The EIR looked at a total of 5 alternatives. The first was the no project alternative. That's required to be analyzed in every EIR, and without implementation of the project, logically none of the identified impacts would occur, but similarly, none of the identified project objectives would be met. The second alternative analyzed in the EIR was termed the ridgeline alternative, and that alternative is defined essentially as the proposed project without any grading on the ridgeline. And as a result, the 54 condominium units, the extension of Dockweiler Drive and Deputy Jake Drive were omitted, and the master plan would be reconfigured to add less new building space, and all of that new building space would be located within the Valley and North Campus areas and not on the hillside. And what the analysis found was that impacts to visual resources, air quality, noise, biological resources, and solid waste would all be either avoided or reduced under this alternative. However, because the extension of Dockweiler wouldn't occur, but the college would be expanded, that new college entrance wouldn't be provided along Dockweiler, and access would be gained primarily along Placerita Canyon, and that would actually result in a significant impact with regard to traffic. So there was a new impact identified under this alternative that the proposed project didn't have. The next alternative that was analyzed was called the reduced development Oak Tree alternative. This alternative does not include the extension of Deputy Jake Drive or the 54 condominium units, and reconfigured the master plan just a little bit to reduce the size of 2 classroom buildings, the proposed dormitory, and the chapel. And this alternative would result in the preservation of up to 39 oaks that were identified as impacted trees in the EIR, as well as all of the 42 oaks that James discussed. The analysis found that under this alternative, impacts to solid waste and biological resources would be reduced. The next alternative analyzed was the single-family alternative. This alternative would replace the 54 condominium units with 21 single-family 2-story homes, and those homes would be accessed via a private roadway off of Dockweiler Drive that would terminate in a cul-de-sac near the existing terminus of Deputy Jake. And the analysis found that impacts to visual resources, air quality, noise, solid waste, and biological resources would be reduced. However, as with the ridgeline alternative, a new significant impact was identified with regard to fire services. The fire department would like to see this be a through road and would not like to see it terminate in a cul-de-sac, and objects to that roadway configuration. And so a new significant impact was identified under this alternative. And the last alternative was called the existing general plan zoning alternative, and it includes what the project would look like if the designations under the general plan and zoning ordinance were not changed. And Dockweiler is currently designated as a 6-lane major highway, and so this alternative looked at the extension of Dockweiler as a 6-lane major highway rather than the 4-lane secondary highway as proposed. And this analysis, and rather than including the 54 condominium units, the master plan would be reconfigured to include some of the campus uses within the area that's currently proposed for those multifamily uses. And in this case, impacts to visual resources, air quality, noise, solid waste, and biological resources would be reduced. And under all of these alternatives, the impacts would be reduced, but not to a level of less than significant, except some under the ridgeline alternative, and therefore that alternative was determined to be the environmentally superior alternative. CEQA requires that the EIR identify which of the analyzed alternatives would be environmentally superior. However, again, with the ridgeline alternative, there would be a new impact with regard to traffic because the new campus entry along Dockweiler Drive wouldn't be provided. That summarizes the alternatives analysis.
That concludes staff and consultant presentation, and we will be available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. Ms. Schaefer, thank you so much. Let me start with questions from the commission to staff at this time. Okay, sure.
I just have a couple of
Sure.
clarifying questions. On the parking analysis of Terrace and Vista, the guest parking is all off-street. The designated guest parking is all off-street, right?
All of the designated guest parking spaces are on-site and off-street. That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
In the proposal, the existing on-street parking, will that continue to be allowed?
Commissioner Ostrom,
Not
are
on
you
the
referring-
extension, but on the existing road.
Are you referring to Valle
On
del Oro?
Dockweiler.
Dockweiler Drive.
Yeah.
Yes, the existing parking on street would remain or would be permitted as restriping is not proposed as a part of the Masters College Master Plan project, and likely would not be necessary until traffic volumes warrant the restriping of that portion of Dockweiler Drive to 4 lanes.
Okay. The other thing I was curious about was when I went through the alternative analysis, as you were talking about the impacts on the environment, there was also a change in the scope of the project. Was that due to the input from the applicant, or was that just something you assumed, or how did you come up with the changing size of the proposal?
Are you asking how the alternatives were defined?
Yeah.
Okay. That they were defined through a process in order to determine how the project could be modified in order to avoid or substantially reduce any of the identified impacts. So we looked at various combinations of the project components that could be included or omitted, with the idea that they may or may not achieve the objectives identified for the project, and then went into an analysis to determine how they would affect the environmental impacts.
So basically, what you did is you changed the project, and the applicant didn't have any part of that, or?
Correct, Commissioner Ostrom. Again, we just looked at the impacts of the project, oak trees, ridgeline, and we decided to use those as alternatives to try to reduce the impacts to those sections of the EIR. So it was all staff, city staff, utilization of those alternatives. They did provide the maps for what we wanted. So what you see up there is something that city staff worked with the applicant to provide for the EIR. But city staff did pick the alternatives based on the impacts of the analysis.
I see. Has the applicant commented on these revised scope changes, or?
Well, I think over the years since I've been working, most applicants aren't very happy with alternatives.
Okay.
They usually like their project description. So, I mean, you could ask them, but I imagine they're probably still pretty happy with the project description, not the alternatives.
The other question I had was, we recently we installed a sewer in Clarita Canyon. Who paid for that?
I don't know the specific answer on that. Carrie Breyer here is from our city engineering department. She probably can answer that question when we get to, unless you want to answer right now, we can get
Well,
Carrie.
I guess we can wait later. I just want to know who ultimately paid for that. Let's see.
I believe well, we can get Carrie up. I don't want to guess.
Commission. Carrie Breyer with the senior engineer with the city's Development Services Division. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I believe that was installed by the city. And then as the residents tie into that line, there's a reimbursement district set up where they reimburse the city for that work.
Great.
I'm not entirely sure about that. I can get back to you on that on the next meeting.
Okay, because I remember when it came up when we were talking about the dormitories, and
Yes.
and
Masters College did pay for a portion of that line
okay,
because
paid for-
because they are tying into it.
yeah,
Yes.
okay,
Mhm.
all right.
We can get back to you on more details with that at the next meeting.
Thanks, Karen.
Maybe through the discussions tonight, they'll take care of it. And then one last question. You had alluded to something about Mark Winger's letter. Is that all taken care of with the, he's the superintendent of the Newhall school. So that's,
Agreement, with the school district. Yeah, actually, I don't know what the current status is at this moment, but I do know that they being the Master's College and Mr. Winger are working together.
yeah, because we got two letters. I just want to make sure that,
Commissioner Ostrom, a meeting has been set up between the Master's College and the school district to discuss a potential mitigation fee for the impacts associated with this particular project, specifically with the 54 units, multifamily units.
wouldn't that occur when the 54 units were to go in, or because they're not treated any differently in the actual implementation than a outside of a master plan 54 unit installation, are they? Or
I guess the bottom line is they're going to get an agreement with the school district.
okay.
The legal aspect of it, as far as when they're supposed to, is probably prior to building permits, but historically, the city's required agreements before going out of the planning commission, and definitely the city council stage. So that's something that city staff's been communicated to the applicant over the last 2 years. They're continuing to work on that, and I think they're getting closer to having an agreement, but maybe the applicant can talk more about that.
Well, I was just, because the implication here is that we have to deal with all of the fees and everything right now, rather than when these things actually go in. I always assume that the fees would take place when things are built and installed. And all we're talking about is allowing the portions of the project that we approve in the master plan to go in, and that the fees and all that would be dealt with at the time that they put them in.
Again, the city's been requiring the applicant to get those agreements now rather than later. So they'll have agreements in place. They may not pay the fees right now, but prior to building permit, when they get ready to pull building permits,
Yeah.
then they would be required to actually pay the fees.
Yes, okay. All right, thanks. Okay.
Strangers in the night.
Someone asked old Blue Eyes how you got to be a great singer. He answered, you sing great songs. And we have 56 great songs on stage at the Canyon Theater Guild in Old Town Newhall. In My Way, a musical tribute to Frank Sinatra. August 1st through September 6th. Call for tickets now, 799-2702. Do it my way.
Summertime means good times with the City of Santa Clarita's Concerts in the Park series. Come out to Central Park each Saturday at 7 p.m. for a great lineup of music, including Queen Nation, Hollywood U2, The Craze, and a whole lot more. Family, fun, and entertainment all summer long at Central Park. Check out the full lineup online at santa-clarita.com, and don't miss the Concerts in the Park series. This message is sponsored by Time Warner Cable.